Hello, everyone. I'm Andrew, and I'd like to thank you all for being here at the last one. For those of you who don't know, we are the Aeritae Consulting Group, and we are working on a program that will validate passwords. Now, during our presentation today, we are going to be talking mainly about our progress over the semester, but first we want to give you a quick overview of our project. At the end, we'll give a final review before opening up the floor for Q&A. First is the big picture. Some quick background. Aeritae is a technology consulting firm headquartered in St. Paul, Minnesota. They use a platform called ServiceNow to help their clients support their own digital customers. ServiceNow is a cloud-based, highly customizable application platform that can be utilized in a number of different ways to help businesses with their technological needs. Now, the problem we were given, ServiceNow has a basic password validation already implemented for all users. This checks basics like length and types of characters in the password. They also have another optional layer of validation called Stronger that checks for additional features in a password. But there were still some more features that Aeritae wanted to add to their validation program to make it a little more robust. That's where our project comes in. We were tasked to create a robust layer of password validation that added to the following features: checks against the user's last 10 passwords, checks against the top 100 most common used passwords on the internet, checks the user's personal information in the password, such as their name, the option to automatically generate a valid password that can be used. Now I'm going to turn it over to my partner Lee, who will tell you about the progress we made on our project this semester.
Thank you, Andrew. Hi, everyone. My name is Yuchen Lee. The first half of the semester was a slow start for us. We spent most of our first spring learning about the ServiceNow platform and creating user stories. The second spring was more productive, and we created a basic prototype outside of ServiceNow. That taught us a lot about how to code a password validation program. Here is a screenshot of that prototype that we showed off at our midterm presentation. As you can see, we were able to get real-time CSS validation working, which was one of our biggest accomplishments of the first half of the semester. During the second half of the semester, we have made even bigger strides. During Spring 3, we connected our prototype to the ServiceNow database and integer it into the environment. For Spring 4, we finished all the remaining functionalities that were requested, including checking against the top 100 most common password and the personal information. And here's my partner Ben. He's going to show you the demonstration of the project.
Thank you, Lee. So my name is Ben. I'll be showing you the demo. Exit out. So this is what the change password page looks like now after being integrated. From the main menu, if we can go back, let's see. Oh, it's slow. Anyway, this is what it looks like. From the home page, the user can click a change password link. It'll bring them here after we go back here. Anyway, we'll go back. It's right here. So change password, easy for the user to find. So similar to most change password systems, you get prompted for your old password to make sure you're not somebody fraudulently changing passwords to gain access to the account. One issue we had from migrating from our prototype to ServiceNow in Sprint 3 is we lost real-time validation updates. But as we type in, we eventually got these to work. We also added a password strength bar. So as the user begins to type in their password, as more requirements are being met, the bar fills, eventually going to full. For the demo, we have included a unhide password button, so we can show you as password requirements are being filled, things begin to get checked off the list. It checks against common things like password. You'll notice in the down here, cannot use password as a password. 123, let me in, bite me, common passwords also get stopped. This is just a simple array that can be edited and updated fairly easily by people as time progresses and new passwords become more popular or less popular. Another thing we added in the final Sprint 4 was checking against personal information. So our user, Abraham Lincoln, cannot use his name Abraham in his password. Another feature that we added in Sprint 4 is the auto-generated password. Users can scroll down here and click the auto-generate password. A password will be generated using 1 out of 500 words with a single letter being capitalized randomly throughout the word, and it adds 4 random digits to the end of the password. They can't be sequential or use the same number twice, so you'll get a unique, not 1, 2, 3, 4 or 1, 1, 1, and a special character added to the end randomly that they can copy paste from here into the new password and retype password. It also does check against previous 10. The way this is set up now, this password history can be changed. So if you don't want 10, you can change it to 3, 4, 5, as much as or as many you deem adequate for your security standards. Let's see. And I think that's it for the demo. Checks against personal information, checks against top 100, checks for standard special characters, upper lowercase numbers, checks against the commonly used, and make sure that the user cannot include personal information such as first or last name while they are creating a password.
Thanks, Ben. So I'm Taylor, and I'll just start off our conclusion by talking about some of the issues we encountered during our project. One of the big ones was we had to spend most of the first half of the semester learning how ServiceNow worked and kind of doing some training with the platform. Another thing is we hadn't used JavaScript recently, so we kind of had to relearn how that works and what some of the new standards are for what's considered good code and what isn't. And then anyone who attended our midterm presentation, you know that our biggest hurdle is the progress we were making. We set up a lot of user stories at the beginning of the semester, and we weren't on track to complete all of them. So that's kind of what we want to talk about. So one of our main goals that we talked about at the midterm was reprioritizing our goals. So as you can see on Sprint 2, we had a lot of user story points that we wanted to complete, and we didn't complete most of them. So we kind of reprioritized, and we went from 21 user stories to 7, and from 111 story points to 40, which was much more doable with the time we had left and still allowed us to complete all the functionality we'd been asked to do. So on the left, the blue bar is what we plan to do. And the green bar is what was actually accomplished. So you can see once we reprioritized, we made much better progress. So we learned a lot from this project. One of the big things was working with code that was already written and implemented. So at the beginning of our project, we thought it was fairly straightforward, validate some passwords. But once you start working with code that's already running and functioning for people, it becomes a lot more challenging. Another thing we learned was how to delegate the workload to different team members based on what they wanted to do, what they had the skill level and availability for. And learning how to translate business requirements, what we'd been asked to do, into actual technical functionalities. So kind of the next steps for our project is a possible site-wide implementation, making the code available to people who want to add that sort of robust customization to their software, and making it more accessible. So if any of you noticed, the CSS validation only deals with colors, red and green. We'd like to see some sort of other visual clues or symbols added to make it more accessible to colorblind users. And so yeah, in conclusion, our main project was to build a robust password validation program, which we managed to do. So it checks the last 10 users' passwords, so you can't reuse old passwords. Checks the top 100 most common passwords on the internet, and checks for personal information such as the name. And then it will also auto-generate a valid password that can be used. So thanks for listening, and we'll open the floor to any questions you guys might have.
Well, I was going to ask about the red green, but you answered that already. You showed at Sprint 2 you had a ton of stuff that was left, and then later you were making much better progress. Did that imply there's a whole bunch of features that you didn't get to?
Yes, most of those features were things that hadn't been asked of us. They're out of our scope, such as being able to log in with your email or your username, being able to use security questions or things like that.
I think I would have liked to see in the next steps to list all the things that didn't.
Okay.
Yeah, those were requirements the team came up with on top of our business requirements, because this would help make the project a little bit more difficult, I guess.
That's a word I'd use.
Yeah. I had a question on the top 100. You said that was that an array? Is that just in the script?
Yeah.
So it is, right now it's just an array. So it's just a list from top 100, find on a website. You can just populate the array. In the future, it could probably be connected to a reliable website that updates regularly and hopefully pull directly from the source, so someone doesn't have to go in and change it manually. But currently, it's just pulling from an array that has been hard-coded in.
Yeah. Maybe the other option would be putting it actually in a table or something where you can update it and then encrypting it. Probably, I know it's publicly available information, but that would be good. And then the auto-generated one, that's just a list as well. So
It's another array, yes,
Okay.
of 500 words.
But it generates each portion of the password
Yes.
randomly, right?
Yes. The
Yep,
word
it
is-
randomly chooses one of 500 words, randomly capitalizes one of those letters in the word, and then randomly chooses some numbers.
Okay. That's good. You guys, you went, you added more features than we expected, which is really good. So I think we're looking to definitely apply this in some of our customers' login pages and websites. So good.
Yes.
What percentage of your project you say was leveraging existing ServiceNow functionality, and what percentage was adding JavaScript code?
So one of the main challenges, ServiceNow is really modular. A lot of the stuff is made to be user-friendly, but it also makes it difficult. Chunks of code that are built in, like the "is this a valid password" function itself, is separated from the JavaScript from the change page. So a lot of the struggling we had in sprints 1 and 2 was trying to locate where these functions actually were. I think the password strength bar was something that was already being used in other places in ServiceNow that we figured would be a good match for this page. So we managed to migrate it from where it was located somewhere else in ServiceNow and add it to the page itself. So it's probably 30-70, 30% migrated, 70% added.
That's what I would say.
Yes.
Were there any like libraries used for the password validation, or was that all of your own checks?
It was mostly hand coded. It wasn't. We used Glide records, and Glide systems were a library that was in ServiceNow that we pulled for personal information to access the database for personal information. But other than that, it was mostly basic JavaScript things.
Did you come across something called JavaScript?
JavaScript,
JellyScript.
JellyScript.
I think I saw the word once or twice, but
Some weird version of JavaScript for ServiceNow.
Yeah, they're phasing, Jelly's being phased out of service now,
Oh,
so.
yeah, okay.
They're all going Angular now, it's all in place.
Any further questions?
Thank you.
Thank you.